everyone. Good morning. This is a pre-recorded video, so we will be discussing things that are in the news as of Friday the 24th. But we want to talk about what's going on with the U.S. and the Iranian war and the escalations and what appears to be just kind of a failing of diplomatic negotiations so far. So I want to go ahead and pass it to you, Senator, and we can go ahead and start this off on some of the new developments, what has been taking place in the past 24 hours for us, and the implications of that.
Okay. Well, we've chosen as the title that Trump is doubling down on the Iranian tar baby. And for those, younger people don't tend to know about it, but there was a very popular writer. He was a black writer. Uncle Remus that's what he used as his pen name, and he did various stories, childhood stories, and one was the story about the tar baby, and you have this fox that's it's cunning and it's shrewd, but it's always frustrated because this rabbit is always, the cocky rabbit is always getting away with stuff. So the fox decides to get back at the rabbit, and he creates this tar baby by mixing kerosene and asphalt, and he makes it look like a figure. And so the rabbit comes walking by, tips his hat to the tar baby, and the tar baby doesn't do anything, just sits there and stares at him. And so the rabbit gets irritated, and he demands that the tar baby respond to him. And of course, the tar baby is not even alive. And so then the rabbit is kind of a haughty rabbit and gets really furious, and it punches the tar baby with one of its fists, and the fist sticks in the tar baby, and the rabbit then is furious and demands that the tar baby let go of his hand. And when the tar baby just sits there motionless and doesn't even crack a smile, then the rabbit gets doubly furious and punches with the other fist, and now both fists are there, and before long he headbutts the tar baby, and now he's all tangled up, and he's terribly engrossed. And anyway, the fox is there laughing and chuckling, and so he comes out on the scene, and he talks to the rabbit, and the rabbit says, well, you know, he knows the fox is going to really hurt him now. And so the rabbit says, well, he said, whatever you do, he said, you can do anything you want to me, but please don't throw me in the briar patch. And at that, the fox figures, well, I'm going to make it worse. So he throws him in the briar patch, which is the home for the rabbit. And the rabbit is able to get himself free to the tar baby and escape and live to fight another day. Well, this is not an exact replica of that childhood story, but this is definitely a tar baby for Donald Trump. Benjamin Netanyahu persuaded Trump that if only we would drop a lot of bombs, kill a lot of people, the people of Iran would fall on their knees and praise the Israelis and the Americans and say, you've delivered us, and they would overthrow the government. It was totally absurd. Netanyahu knew it was absurd. I'm sure that our own intelligence agencies, the CIA and all of the other defense intelligence agencies, I'm sure that they did not support this notion that Iran was about to fall of its own accord. And so in any event, the next thing, we're drawn into this bombing campaign, and this has been going on for months and months and months now. Many Americans believe that it would be going on at least a year from now. Recent polling has indicated that. But here's the fact that, when we went into Vietnam, there was tremendous public support, bipartisan public support. It was the Democrats who took us into the war in Vietnam, starting with John F. Kennedy, bringing it to fruition with Lyndon Johnson, and it was Richard Nixon who was elected on a pledge to extricate us, and he said peace with honor, and he had almost pulled it off, and then the politics just worked to the advantage of the Democrats. If they could overthrow Nixon, then they could take power, and that's what they did. So the South Vietnamese were sort of left in the lurch over all that. But in any event, we entered this war. We didn't enter with this tremendous, powerful, bipartisan support for the war. We entered the Iranian war with enormous public skepticism. The Democrats opposed the war firmly from the beginning. Republicans were divided, and you have sort of an intellectual elite. I consider them, because I consider myself, and as part of that, there was this foreign policy elite within the Republican Party who were very opposed to the war for very logical reasons. And then there was sort of the mainstream people, the military-industrial complex of the Republican Party that said, "Oh yeah, this is going to be a breeze, no problem. Just go in. The Iranians are just waiting for us. They want us to come and bomb them and deliver them, and they welcome the bombs. The Iranians welcome us bombing their country. They're going to think it's the most wonderful thing." I mean, we seriously, on the Republican side, seriously believed that the Iranians would celebrate our bombing, and there's no instance in human history where that has been the case. So we started off with the war. Americans from the beginning have hated the war in Iran. The hatred has gotten more and more so to where now fully 2/3 of the entire public opposes the war. They think it's a disaster. But there are powerful Zionist donors who are able to leverage their power within Congress, and they have got us just doubling down on disaster. The thing that is most concerning right now, they've got Donald Trump, and I think they're playing off his inherent way of dealing with problems, which is to double down, to be twice as outrageous each time until the other side backs off. And apparently it worked very well for him in business. War is not business. I've seen politicians back during the Johnson administration.
I mean, I would kind of make the clarification. I guess peace is not business. War is big business.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that war is not like business.
Mm-hmm.
And the psychology of war is not like business. Robert McNamara, during the Vietnam War, he actually had charts that sort of showed that, as you escalated the violence, at a certain point, it reached a level that went across, and when they intersected, then North Vietnam would say, "Oh, that's it. This is too expensive." Bloodshed is not the same as financial distress. Mm-hmm. And financial distress can cause people to make rational decisions that this is just too costly. But when your wife has been killed, when your daughter when your grandchildren have died, when your parents have been assassinated. People don't use those cold, dispassionate calculations. I have a very dear friend who fought with me in Vietnam. He's a Mexican American, dual citizen. He's retired, medically retired from very serious injuries. But he told me how when he had joined the Marines, it was a good thing for people from Mexico to do. They got a good job and so forth. And he ended up going off to Vietnam. He said he got to Vietnam and he really didn't care that much about it. To some extent, I think it was kind of an American war rather than, didn't involve him. But he was very close to a young Marine second lieutenant who was really beloved by the Marine troops that he led. And this fellow, just before I joined the troops at the ridge line at Nui Laksan, he had been killed by a booby trap. It was a heavy artillery round that exploded. And my friend, this Mexican American, was responsible for gathering the pieces of the lieutenant's body. And he told me that after that, he really had a real love for this lieutenant, and he just became so furious. He just wanted to kill the Viet Cong. He had this passion to kill them. And I just give that example as the mentality of war, when blood is shed, it changes the whole dynamic. And it's bad enough if people that you fight shoulder to shoulder with are killed. That creates a tremendous psychological dynamic. But when someone kills your close family members, people who are completely innocent of anything, who aren't even involved, the emotions take hold, and you don't make these cold, calculating decisions anymore. I don't think Trump understands that, and none of his advisors are explaining that to him, because he's, so many of his closest advisors are folks on the golf course, people like Lindsey Graham, who he wouldn't risk his precious behind for anybody, or for anything, or for this country. So the people that Trump deals with, many of them very, very fine businessmen, they don't comprehend, because people in the billionaire class are unaffected by wars the way that ordinary people are affected by wars. Mm-hmm. And so it makes it much more likely that you're going to have a misunderstanding about the dynamics of war. And this is where we are right now with Iran. We killed off all the moderates through this decapitation, and they were replaced by much shrewder, tougher, younger, more dynamic people. Yeah. And we are not going to get out of this easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that what we have seen in the past few days is the introduction of the Houthis entering into this conflict. We saw the Biden administration and the Trump administration both take on the same initiative to try and defeat the Houthis. so Operation Guardians. Was it Guardian's Edge? I can't remember what the operation was, but it ended in essentially a ceasefire. So it wasn't a win on the Americans where we, what we proclaimed, oh, we defeated the Houthis. So we're starting this back up again. And I think that is an interesting turn of events where you had Iran and the US and Israel kind of going at it. And then you had the introduction of Hezbollah in Lebanon. And now you have the introduction of the Houthis, who, given their stance, has a pretty solid, strength over the Red Sea in that channel that could help aid in trade with oil. So we see that they just attacked, I believe, 2 Saudi Arabian tanker ships, and we saw a jump in the oil prices because of that.
The Houthis, I had a delegation of Houthis come to visit me because I was very deeply involved in the war. The United States had orchestrated major terrorist forces, Al-Qaeda, to some extent ISIS, and we were trying to topple the government of Syria on behalf of Israel, who's always trying to destroy all of its neighbors. This delegation of Houthis came and they visited me, and one of the things that that struck me, they presented me with a I don't know what you call it. It's a sort of a plaster cast of housing inside of Yemen. Now, Yemen has a very unusual geography and has these very deep ravines, and the people live on the insides of the ravines, and they build their homes into the sides of the ravines. It makes them extremely difficult to strike with air power or artillery or whatever. And just the geography of Yemen is very favorable to the defender, much like it is in Iran. And the Houthis are a very, very tough militant group of people. They pretty much keep to themselves. They don't cause anybody trouble, but if anybody messes with the Houthis, they got to watch out, because I don't know that the Houthis have ever truly been defeated in battle.
We aided in Saudi Arabia's providing them weapons to bomb the Houthis for, I believe, like a decade. It was a very long time, and they still didn't achieve the annihilation of the Houthis, because I think one human condition, you can kill people, but you can't kill an idea. So you will have different people who rise up and take the mantle of that idea. And so, per one Houthi person they kill, they probably recruit 10 more, with just the kind of the sheer bruteness of them, how they go about doing it. So I think that is, kind of what we see in Iran, how, we're told that the Iranian people, and it is somewhat true, you have a considerable amount of people that don't want the strict rule of kind of have what the Ayatollah was doing, but they don't encourage a land invasion by a foreign country like the U.S. after what they'd seen in Iraq or Afghanistan. So, we were told that they were going to be all blissful and happy that this attack was happening, and we had the exact opposite happen, where you have people kind of cling together on the sense of their nationalism and band together and set aside kind of their differences for a foreign enemy kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, with the Houthis, they don't have the political divisions that you had with the Iranians. The Iranians, they were never a people inclined to revolt against their government. It's more like the difference between Republicans and Democrats. You have you have Democrats who would love to get rid of President Trump.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really mean that the Democratic Party wants to have a revolution and kill everybody. At least not the majority of them.
Yeah, or a foreign government. Yeah, a foreign government coming in and bombing the White House. I think that would, they wouldn't find that to be unacceptable, and they probably would band together with the majority of the population in revolting against that foreign entity coming in and trying to instill some kind of quote unquote revolution.
Now, on the other hand, the Houthis in Yemen are totally united, have always been totally united. They began this long series of wars they're in right now by attacking and defeating ISIS and Al-Qaeda, the two great terrorist powers of the Middle East. They were defeated by the Houthis, and because Saudi Arabia has always been a backer of both ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and so this was an irritation to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia tried to install a puppet government. The individual that they got recognized as the internationally recognized head of Yemen actually lived in Saudi Arabia. He didn't live in Yemen because the people hated him. So they for many years they tried to install that guy, and then they gave up, and now they have some other puppet regime. But the Houthis control the important parts of Yemen, and they have defeated ISIS and Al-Qaeda. We have always supported ISIS and Al-Qaeda along with Saudi Arabia. And so, when we supported Al-Qaeda in Syria to try to overcome Syria, and eventually we did, that was not the only time that we have supported the very force that attacked the Twin Towers and the Pentagon on 9/11. And you'll never find journalists. All the information is actually in mainstream reports from New York Times and Post and so forth, but you won't find journalists who connect the dots and say, hey, look, this is really peculiar why the United States is supporting Al-Qaeda just 10 years after the Twin Towers fell. I mean, that's kind of amazing. We're still churning about Nazis this and Nazis that from back in the 20s and 30s, and they disappeared back in 1945, and we still go on and on and on with Al-Qaeda. Hey, next thing we've got the head of Al-Qaeda in the White House shaking hands with the president. What goes on? What's being held back from the United States people that we've flip-flopped sides? So anyway, but what concerns me now, Morgan, is that we see the Trump administration. At first, it looked like they were going to make peace, have some sort of a reasonable resolution, and it looked like J.D. Vance had actually hit the sweet spot where we could walk away from this, we could get back into preparing for the midterm elections, and Americans would let it fade. And then I think Trump, there was a visit paid to the White House by Netanyahu, which always signals some new instructions from Israel. And so now the latest thing is President Trump is increasing American forces in the Iranian arena.
Yeah, we have a news report on that if you kind of want to watch kind of the summary on what's kind of the new ramping up. We'll It's a very short.
News has learned the U.S. military is surging dozens of medics to an American military hospital in Germany. That's where service members injured in the conflict with Iran are being sent to be treated.
Now, this development comes with other new indications of a U.S. military buildup in the Middle East, as CBS's Natalie Brand reports.
In a sign the conflict with Iran is expanding to the Red Sea, Iranian-backed Houthis claimed responsibility for an attack on Saudi oil tankers there.
The Houthis, frankly, got snookered into this thing by the Iranians.
President Trump warned if the Houthis strike again, the U.S. will inflict a major military punishment against Iran and its Houthi allies.
We can't let them have what they want, which is nuclear weapons.
The U.S. is also sending more military equipment to the region, including aerial refuelers that CBS News has confirmed have been deployed to places like Israel. Flight trackers have also shown B-1 bombers leaving bases in the U.K.
The concurrent resolution is adopted.
On Capitol Hill, the House voted to direct.
So I just find that to be important, just kind of talking about, even the sending medical professionals to the largest hospital that serves U.S. troops in Germany. The new death toll right now is 18 confirmed service members. Go ahead and put that on the screen right now. These are all the ones who have died as a result of this conflict, with the latest being Isabel Gonzalez, and Tyler Feehan, both of which were killed, I believe, in Jordan. The woman is 18 years old, and the man was 25 years old, very young individuals. So I think that is very interesting. You don't see a pathway to peace. We see both Trump kind of doubling down on his Truth Social post, and I think we spoke backstage about one of the Iranian speakers and what they had just written about 2 days ago, speaking about, if we can't get oil through, this conflict, then no one will, reaffirming their strength that they have on the Strait of Hormuz. You had Trump posting about 2 days ago, from when this will air, about when if Iran shoots a ship in the Strait of Hormuz, that the U.S. will retaliate and destroy one bridge or one power plant, including those next to the capital city of Tehran.
Yeah, I don't know. There's the law of war is a rather flexible thing, and it depends on how powerful a particular nation is, whether it abides by the law of war. But traditionally, the law of land warfare has prohibited attacks on infrastructure that is predominantly civilian in nature. And yet, just recently, we bombed a desalination plant. I would say that traditionally, anybody would say, well, yeah, that's a violation of law of war to deprive the population of drinking water. And, there's a feeling, there are elements within the Pentagon that say we don't have to worry about the law of war because nobody's going to hold us to account. And there are other people who say, well, it's still important to who we are that we abide by generally accepted rules. So
yeah, I would be in that. I would be in the later camp. Yeah. I think it's absolutely disgusting. Yeah, to have this new kind of feeling towards war. I feel like Israel's conduct and how they committed this genocide in Gaza has really allowed free room for people to kind of fan away some of the flagrant crimes that would normally, I would think, would bring people to their knees. You're subjecting people to dehydration that have nothing to do with this conflict.
Yeah. There was a very, very terrible incident in New York City just a couple of days ago, where some individual was yelling Allah Akbar and stabbed a couple. One clearly a Jewish guy, I think wearing yarmulke or something, and then an Asian individual, but stabbed them with a screwdriver. I don't know how badly they were hurt, but they were hurt. And so the reaction of the media is to say, we've got to stop accusing Netanyahu of war crimes, because when that happens, people get angry at Jewish people and they take it out on them. Well, I mean, you might have made a similar argument about reporting about Pearl Harbor. You could have said, well, look, you're using all this inflammatory language about Pearl Harbor. Americans are likely to go out and beat up a Japanese citizen because they're angry. So let's stop reporting about Pearl Harbor because it could have an adverse reaction. Well, the problem, I mean, it is true. I mean, people do tend to, connect the dots in strange ways that are not always rational. But you can't just stop reporting on the things that are being done by Netanyahu and his government, and then veer the radical, just hideous, monstrous language from this guy. If you have a genocide, explain why it's not a genocide if you want to, but nobody, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to explain why, okay, 1,200 Israelis were killed, about half of them military, half of them civilian, in the initial thing that kicked off Gaza. And so everybody expected, Israel's going to take some reprisal, but nobody expected that they would slaughter. Really, they slaughtered 75,000, and then Hamas lost the ability to continue to accumulate figures. So the slaughter has continued. I would be amazed if they haven't killed 200,000 people in Gaza today. I find it incomprehensible that the numbers haven't reached a couple 100,000 innocent, almost all of them innocent people. So do you, in order to avoid tensions internally, and in order to avoid the occasional excesses, terrible excesses of violence, do you just ignore the ongoing genocide? Would we have said, well, you shouldn't criticize Adolf Hitler because there are lots of wonderful, patriotic German Americans, and some people are going to get mad at them if you say bad things about Hitler? Mm-hmm. You just can't do that. You've got to, you need an informed electorate who can understand what's going on, and you cannot conceal an ongoing genocide from the public.
Yeah, I think you have a lot more people who are cognizant of that. Even in the Republican Party, the voters, they're starting to ask questions of why this just unquestionable allegiance to Israel is required. We talked backstage about the National Defense Authorization Act that has this Section 219 that integrates the militaries. Thankfully, that it failed the Senate, but it passed the House. But you had a lot of people, both sides of the aisle, the population, asking legitimate questions and kind of scratching their head about this integration, especially given the time that we have, where we have this war with Iran. You had a high-ranking government official, Joe Kent, who resigned from his position, stating about the Israeli control and manipulation in the high sectors to push for this engagement, this war. You have the Pentagon, who has put the Israeli intelligence on, I believe, high alert for their roles in espionage that they conduct in the American government. So it's all very, very strange timing. And given, the constant rapid acceleration of this engagement, we had General Keith Kellogg stating that he wants to call for ground troops in Iran. This was something that we were told would not happen. This is something that we were told in the very beginning that it would take a few weeks. We wouldn't need to do ground troops. That it's not going to be an event just like Iran or Iraq. And it's starting to kind of unfold in the same manner, where you have the top government officials saying, oh, it'll be over in a few weeks. Oh, in order to meet this goal, we might actually have to send boots on the ground. Right now, the death toll with this conflict is at 18 confirmed. You have reports in different, I believe, in Iranian news sources. They claim that they have over 100 U.S. soldiers they've killed. Some kind of, I guess, evidence to lead to maybe their numbers are higher is the fact that the largest hospital in Germany that helps with U.S. service members, they no longer allow the maternity ward to be open to women who were in Germany with their spouses. We just saw a report stating that there are an influx of medical professionals that are being rushed over there, which kind of goes into more of a realm where there are a lot of service members who are severely injured through some of these strikes. We had some reportings come out, I believe, a month ago. I want to say it was MSNBC, but it was reporting on the U.S. bases how extensively they were struck. You had the Pentagon come out and kind of refute these claims. Oh, everything's fine. But we had a lot of surveillance footage, or satellite footage, pardon me, kind of showing the destruction of some of these military bases surrounding Iran in the Southwest Asian countries. So I think that's very interesting, that we might not be getting the whole truth, which often happens in war, of what the true casualty rate is.
Yeah, there's talk that there could be 100 or 200 additional wounded. I tend to think that the number of killed is accurate. You can never tell for sure until everything is said and done. But I'm inclined to think that it would be difficult to conceal the killed in action. But there are a lot more casualties. Interestingly, I'm very familiar with Landstuhl Army Hospital in Kaiserslautern in Vietnam, because I was responsible for providing the legal support for Landstuhl Hospital. And so I would work with the commander of Landstuhl routinely, a very fine guy named Colonel Hitzelberger. He was a German American, very, very fine doctor. And so this was, I was doing this back in the early 80s, and this has been our go-to location. When you have people who are badly injured, they are shipped off to Landstuhl, and this has been going on for many, many years. So they've added about 150 additional personnel. Now, if you have 100 casualties, you ought to be able to just absorb that within what you've got. That's not some enormous influx. So I don't know. It's part of it may be plussing up the numbers to accommodate the casualties. They may have some very serious casualties who are being handled there rather than shipping them back to the U.S., where people would suddenly realize the gravity of what's going on. So they may be bottling it up there, but they may also, and my concern is that they may also be gearing up for a ground action. There's now talk in the media about new ground forces being sent, a couple thousand paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division and the U.S. Army Rangers, very, very elite group, the Rangers are. And then, of course, we've got 2 Marine Expeditionary Units comprising about 5,000 Marines. Now, you almost have to live this to understand that the great fighting takes place with these elite shock troops, whether it's the Marines, which I was part of, or whether it's the airborne troops. And it's not to diminish the role of others, because there are others that are sort of the next tier of individuals, but so much of the dying takes place within the Marines, within Special Forces, and the paratroopers and so forth. So when you see these forces being plussed up, these are the people who assault very difficult objectives with the understanding that you're likely to die. We're doing that. We're building them up, and apparently there's internal discussions and planning within the Pentagon to add another 10,000 ground troops, infantry and armored units, the ones that are in the most high state of readiness, send them over there. And then you have 50,000 other personnel in the area in varying states of readiness. Those are not the ones who are likely to play the crucial role in attacks on Iran. The 2 things they talk about capturing Karg Island. Karg Island, very important to Iran. It's the place where oil is pumped to Karg Island, and the tankers go there. They get filled up with Iranian oil. Obvious target. Problem is, it's relatively easy to capture Karg Island. The Marines could go in, they could take it over, and they could do that with, I think, it would be a relatively straightforward combat operation. The problem is that Karg Island sits beneath mountains that look down on Karg Island, so that the Iranians can fire missiles, they can send drones, they can guide them, they can see the American troops, and they can attack them pretty effectively. So that's the problem with Karg Island. The other thing is they're talking about going into this, they call it Pickaxe Mountain. I don't know where it got that name, but anyway, this is where the Israelis, the president should be prohibited from ever talking to anybody about Israeli intelligence. I mean, it's just, it's a bad influence on him. But the Israelis say that the nuclear centrifuges and things have been moved to this very deep granite mass that has great defenses, and we don't have the ability to penetrate with our bunker busting bombs. They won't go down deeply enough because it's very deep in the rock. We could do it with a nuclear weapon, with a tactical nuclear weapon. I'm sure there's discussion about doing that. But the other thing, which seems to be the more dominant thing, is the idea of sending a force of Americans in to seize that area and then go in and somehow dig out the nuclear material. Now, I don't know what does that do to the Americans who are sent down into the mountain after it's been bombed. We're talking about 80% enriched uranium. If some of that has been unleashed, how do people go in and get that and come back out and live to tell about it? I don't know. I mean, and I don't know enough detail but I know that it comes across as a very hokey effort. This idea that we're going to capture this little piece of Iran and hold it for whatever it takes us, a month or 2 months to dig down and do all of this. We're just targets for drones.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like kind of a bizarre effort, but at this point, people want to tell the president what he wants to hear. The president wants to hear that if I just crank up the heat, that people are going to buckle under my pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're on the staff, you really don't have much of an option but to just tell the president, well, here's what we could do. And it may not be the best idea, but it satisfies the president and takes you off the hot seat for a few minutes.
Mm. Well, we will certainly see. We see Trump kind of taking this time and time again, the scorched earth kind of rhetoric that he uses in his truth posts to what seems to try and initiate some kind of diplomatic talks, and then it just kind of keeps going around in the circle. I know that we're nearing the end of the show. I believe that we discussed everything that we kind of wanted to get into today. I know that there was one part where we mentioned it, but we didn't provide the article for it, which is the political article on the poll of Trump voters kind of losing their patience with the Iran war. A lot of them you have a lot of subscribe MAGA voters, MAGA base that were eventually at the very beginning, this let Trump do what he needs to do and it'll be over soon. You kind of are seeing this fatigue of people realizing that this is, there's no direct end goal, no timeline, and it often resembles a lot of what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, where the goalposts just kept being chipped further down the road.
Yeah, they always, to end the debate, they say, well, we can't have Iran with a nuclear weapon.
Yep.
Iran, until we really put the pressure on them, they did not intend to make a nuclear weapon. The Ayatollah Khamenei issued a fatwa back in 2003 saying that we must never do a nuclear weapon. It's not a moral thing. It's not legally permissible. That's the highest ruling that you can get in Iran. Now, what we have done recently with the massive murders of civilian leadership and so forth, I don't think there's any guarantee that they won't forge on and try to create nuclear weapons at this point, because they've tried the opposite. They've tried cooperating with the West, not doing nuclear weapons. So who knows what'll happen?
Yeah.
But this idea that you can keep putting the American people off and say, oh, well, we got to stop a nuclear weapon. Well, then what are we giving nuclear power to Saudi Arabia? President Trump has just signed an agreement with Saudi Arabia, which is the supporter of ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all of these terrorists, and heavily implicated in the attacks on 9/11. Almost all of the people who flew the jets into the Twin Towers were Saudi Arabians. And there was money from the Saudi royal family that that helped to finance these suicide attackers. So here we are saying, well, yeah, we're against proliferation, but what the heck? Let's give it to the Saudi Arabians. They got a good record. They've supported the same terrorists we have all through this thing. I think at a certain point, people say, give me a break. You're telling us we're supposed to be shaking in our boots about a nuclear weapon that Iran has, but then you say, well, let's give some nuclear power to Saudi Arabia so they can do what they want with it.
Yeah, or the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I would also point out the Operation Midnight Hammer, which we were told was a complete success, and that's what stopped us from going for a full-fledged war with Iran. But if we're accepting that to be the truth, we would need to not accept that to be the truth to understand that's why this conflict's needed. So it's just kind of a devoid of sound reasoning of why this is continued.
Yeah. So I think we'll be watching it. We'll be reporting on it, and we can just hope and pray that we do not put U.S. troops on the ground in Iran. This always leads to places we don't want. This is, from the outset, we have reported on this podcast that Benjamin Netanyahu had two objectives in drawing us into this war. Number one, the most important thing was to get U.S. troops on the ground controlling Iran for the next 3 generations. So for many, maybe for 100 years, we would have occupation forces in Iran doing the dying. I saw that President Trump said something like, "Oh, I could get Israel to come on board with us on this new attack that he's planning. I could do that in 2 minutes." Well, wait a minute. This is Israel's war. So when we're talking about the heavy bloodshed that's going to be involved with troops on the ground, how come those guys are AWOL? How come we're not putting Israeli troops on the front line going into Cargill and going into Pickaxe Mountain? Why aren't that should be at least 50% Israeli troops doing that. They should be bleeding. They should be dying, not just kids from New York City and from Louisiana and from Oklahoma. What about Israel? They're the ones that got us into this. We didn't even want to go to war. And then Netanyahu said, okay, I can do this. I'm just going to attack and I'm going to force Trump's hand. And he did. Trump jumped on board, and the next thing we're off to the races. Well, okay, if it's such a wonderful thing to put boots on the ground in Iran, let's make half of those boots Israeli, because obviously we're not fighting for the United States. We're not fighting for people in this country. So if we're fighting for Israel, well, let's let those people. Let's draft a bunch of these Jewish settlers that are zip tying men's penises and gunning down women in the streets. Mm-hmm. Let's draft those people. Let's put them on the front lines and let them do the bleeding and the dying. It's one thing, the settlers in the West Bank, they're armed and they can burst into the homes of Palestinians who are not allowed to have arms, and they can strip them down and they can humiliate them, they can beat them and they can murder them. Let's see them face some people who have guns on the other side.
Right? Yeah, certainly. Well, with that, we'll end right here. I want to encourage everybody to like and share this video if they found it informative, and to tune in next week at Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time to focus on the news. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Morgan.